good morning, afternoon, or evening. It's a beautiful day here in Atlanta, Georgia, and here we are for another DRS SIGWELL seminar. SIGWELL, if you're new to this community, is the special interest group in design for well-being, happiness, and health within the Design Research Society. And this seminar is about two topics. We usually get one, but today we decided to go with two. So our seminar is on exploring spatial well-being and well-being metrics. So our idea with these webinars, this is the third, by the way, is to continue conversations with authors of outstanding papers presented with during the DRS conferences, and also introduce some new guests to our community, and try to promote more these moments where we get together between conferences. So we also aim to create content for our YouTube channel. The idea is that our students and community can access these videos and use these videos in their classes and so on. We have been having very interesting feedback, so people are using these resources. This is great. So let me introduce people. I'll start by introducing myself. I am Leandro Tonetto, an associate professor in the School of Industrial Design at Georgia Tech. I am also the convener, as we say, of SIGWELL. We have here with us Sarah Harris. You probably received communications from her. She's the organizer of this seminar, and my GRA, who's graduating soon. So we miss you, Sarah, already. We'll have two sessions today, and I will introduce all presenters now, so we can then concentrate on their talks. The first in the lineup is Juan Salamanca Garcia. Juan is a design researcher, an interaction designer exploring product aesthetics and information technologies. He leads research at the Design for Social Viscosity Lab at Illinois, examining the social and material conditions that influence cooperation and collaboration in collective practices like urban commuting. His work introduces social viscosity and agent-based modeling as tools for studying social interaction. So really cool work. I'm curious to see what you have to say, Juan. And also joining us in this first half of our seminar, also on spatial well-being, we have Bisha. Bi is a PhD candidate at the Public Design Lab, School of Design at the Hong Kong Polytechnic University, and he's also a visiting scholar at RMIT University. So his research, which is titled Positive Solitude, Rethinking Public Open Space Design in Densely Populated Urban Contexts, is a study in Hong Kong that explores positive solitude and its role in public open space and high density cities. So in our first part, in our first half, we will have these two speakers, and we'll follow with Q's and A's. In the second part, I'm almost there. Hold on. In the second part, we have well-being metrics. I want to take advantage of this moment to introduce everyone. So I think that would be easier for flow after. In the second part, we have Yvette Shen. Yvette's an associate professor and area coordinator of visual communication design in the Department of Design at The Ohio State University. Yvette serves on the board of AGA Design Educators Community. Her work spans information design, data visualization, and user interface. and also experience design. So she's going to talk about metrics in the second part. She has a strong emphasis on interdisciplinary collaboration and co-design, and investigates how data-driven and systemic design can transform complex information into meaningful and accessible experiences. And last but certainly not least, we have Sander Hermsen. He's a behavioral scientist and designer specializing in behavior change through design. Really cool work. So he explores the effectiveness of designed artifacts in promoting health and sustainability. Sander is a senior scientist at Radboud University Medical Center Prevention Hub and principal behavior scientist at One Planet Research Center, where he focuses more on developing digital interventions for healthier and more sustainable behavior. So we are ready to go. So our presenters mentioned a couple of times metrics. So let's see how these two topics connect. So would like to invite Sander Hermsen to start his presentation.
Perfect. If everything's all right, then you can now see my slides. Fantastic. Yes, thank you, Leandro and Sarah, for inviting me to present on this webinar, and also for allowing sort of like clickbaity titles, which I love. And the title of my presentation is like measuring mental well-being. Can we even measure it? And if so, what should we measure and how? And I hope that by the end of the presentation, I'll have sort of shed light on those issues. And if not, then remind me in the questions. First of all, let's talk about this automated assessment of mental well-being. Why would we even want to do that? Well, a good reason is that there seems to be an increased need for support in mental well-being, especially among adolescents and young adults. And the debate is still open on whether the adolescents and young adults are actually doing worse than they were before. But there's two trends that are clearly visible in society. One is that there's better registration of how young adults are doing. Most countries have only started registering mental well-being among adolescents and young adults like 10 years ago or maybe 15 years ago at max. And at the same time, in many countries, such as the Netherlands, there's massive cutbacks. Right. So at the same time, there's massive cutbacks on mental health care going on. So there is indeed a mental well-being crisis among adolescents and young adults, at least in the Netherlands and in many other places. So what we need is better prevention and early stage interventions. And preferably, because of the cutbacks, we need these to be with limited professional support, as limited as possible. Measuring mental well-being currently is done through the golden standard, which is questionnaires. This is one of them questionnaires, the Warwick Edinburgh Mental Well-being Scale. It's really a good questionnaire. It's short. It asks questions that are quite clear. It comes up with a score that is, and quite easy to interpret. And it also measures the concept quite well. But the problem with mental well-being is that it has all the elements of complexity science. So it tends to be the same for a very long time, as you can see in this graph here. This is over 6 months. The mental well-being scores, questionnaire scores for one person who filled out the same questionnaire for 6 months at a time. So you see, there tends to be memory in this data. It tends to stay at the same level for a very long time. And then suddenly there's a regime shift. There's a transition to a different state. And these regime shifts, they have they act like sort of like this butterfly flapping in the Amazon, causing a storm on the other side of the world, right? So there's a sensitive dependence on initial conditions where very small changes can have huge effects. So what you need to do is actually measure this for a very, 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 very long time. And then all of a sudden, this short and very elegant questionnaire becomes quite burdensome. You have to fill out the same questionnaire a couple of times a day for months and months and months on end to actually properly measure mental well-being. So that is one good reason for to try and automatically assess mental well-being. Another one is delivery of interventions. What you try to do is to get intervention content, to get support for people at the time when they sort of had experienced the mental well-being problems. So this needs to be just in time. That's also an area in which automatic assessment of mental well-being can help us, because it can also trigger the delivery of mental well-being supportive interventions. Prior studies here have shown potential, but they have mostly been on, for instance, stress or mood, and that's not all there is to mental well-being, as we will see in a couple of slides. The good news is that in principle and in theory, we already know what to do here. We need to build GTIs, just-in-time adaptive interventions. In my field, they're pronounced JEDI for some reason. So there's some kind of magic or force involved there, I think. And what happens is that you combine an algorithm that has sort of like decision points. When do you want an intervention delivered? And combine that with tailoring variables, like what intervention do you want delivered? So you get a decision rule, what and when, and then you need to find out whether it fits the personal needs of a person, also the opportunity for them to act upon it, and the receptivity, in how far they're open for the message at that point. Okay, good. That is in principle what we need to do. Also in principle, from the behavioral sciences, we know many like generic intervention components that we can add to the intervention, so that we can help people with goal setting, with action planning, with skill development, self-monitoring, habits, self-regulation skills, motivational, and also dealing with external influences like the social environment, physical environment, the physical resources. And we also know how to do it on the algorithm side. We need sort of like a digital twin model, AI, to determine what and when. And to inform that, we can use sensor data. And there's plenty of sensors out there. But now we come to the elephant in the room, obviously. What sensors would we need to employ here? And that also poses the follow-up question, the deeper question. These sensors, they have to map onto actual aspects of mental well-being. So what do we even think is part of mental well-being? And there, the literature is quite inconclusive. Oh yeah, small in between. This is sensors that are currently used in wearables to measure stress and arousal. There's really a lot going on there, so you can measure like skin conductance, and the thicker the line, the more often they are used in scientific papers to measure stress. And you can use like accelerometers. They can measure physical activity, and the physical activity is predictive of perceived stress. And so is skin conductance, the galvanic skin response, the body temperature, also predictive of stress. When you do this, then and you have the right set of sensors, which measure the right set of low-level features, and then you can achieve up to somewhere between 80 to 95% accuracy in measuring stress in theory. In practice, a bit less, I'm afraid. So what we need to find out is what sensors do we need to employ to measure mental well-being. And that, yeah, like I said, it poses the deeper question, what do we think constitutes mental well-being in the first place? In our studies, we were interested in what young adults think constitutes their mental well-being, because they are the ones at risk, right? And whether they have an idea for design requirements that they see for automatically and unobtrusively measuring their mental well-being. This research is not easy to do because often these subjects are, yeah, sort of like taboo, something that you don't openly talk about. There's also a lot going on, which is maybe tacit knowledge or maybe even beyond conscious scrutiny. It's well known that people who live with continuous high-level stress are often not so aware of their stress levels, for instance, right? Fortunately, design research has many, many very beautiful methods to help people think about things that are not even, that cannot be put to conscious scrutiny so easily. And one of the methods that we've employed is prototyping. Prototype is, I think it's a very nice word that is a contamination of provoking and provocative and prototype. So this is a design probe with purposefully limited functionality. So something beforehand that the thing isn't really measuring what you want to measure, and you also tell people that it doesn't. So people can then display what we call positive objectification. Pronunciation of English words is sometimes very difficult. The good thing about this objectification is that you can talk about that thing that is making the mistakes. I'm having this hell of a day, it's totally stressful, I'm feeling very down, and this thing is telling me I'm doing all right. It makes it very easy to talk about this kind of thing. And it also, it also maybe brings it more to the fore. So it's easier to think about and be aware of as well. We had 2 prototypes in our research. One is a Garmin smartwatch. I think I can better, here it is. It's something that people wear and you can see the heart rate. And also it displays the stress level and steps that you take. And another prototype that we had was actual facial recognition app, which is well, while we did the research, became illegal in the EU, but you could still use it for research purposes, but you can't commercially do facial recognition anymore. But what this thing does, and it's really good at it, is, they said, is measuring emotions from video content. So what we did, we recruited young adults to take part in our research. At the start of the measurement, we had them fill out a couple of questionnaires, like the well-being measurement questionnaire that I talked about. PSS is the #1 stress scale. MIH5 is also about well-being. ATI is about how attractive you find interacting with technology, so that we don't have only have people are really, really in love with technology in our study, but more like to the population level and demographics. And then every day, for 7 days, people would wear the activity tracker. They would answer questionnaires about how they were doing. And once in every 24 hours, they would record a daily 1-minute video about how they were doing that day. And these were analyzed with the facial recognition software. And people got the results of that afterwards. So not right away, because we weren't able to do that in a manner that would also respect their privacy. And then we had an interview with all the participants, and we also did exit measurements. We asked them about their well-being again and talked to them about the acceptability, practicality, efficacy of the measurements, and also whether they would want to use it or not. Participants, interestingly, 23 females participated and only 2 males. So I think this is sort of like maybe socially, women are maybe more inclined to talk about their mental well-being, or maybe, there's something going on there for further research. They were all students at the campus. Also, interestingly, their mental well-being, their stress levels, and also their affinity with technology did not differ from population means. So these were like normal people, so to say. And also it didn't change during the week, not significantly, so it didn't. So yeah, these were they sort of the study did not intervene with their mental well-being. And when we then talk about what did they think constituted their mental well-being, it turns out that people mention a very, very, very broad range of aspects that they found was part of their mental well-being. In total, there were like 29 different concepts. It can be classified in 6 overarching dimensions. I'll go into that in the next slide. But participants also differed greatly in the aspects they mentioned. I think it's better if I just move on to the next slide. On average, participants mentioned aspects from at least, I think the lowest level was 2 of these dimensions, and the highest was 5 out of 6, and on average like 3. And there were at least 5 different aspects on average mentioned by each participant. And what you then notice is that for them, mental well-being is about, well, the obvious one is the hedonic aspects, so stress, emotions, your mood, feeling good about yourself, your happiness. Also, maybe reasonably common sense are the eudaimonic aspects. So this is like the balance between your tasks and your resources, the challenges you set out, whether you're, you have enough skills and resources to face them. Also boredom, feeling of achievement, feeling useful, purpose are among this. Relatedness aspects, social contacts, and I think the positive solitude from the previous speaker would also be around among these, right? Friendship, family relationships, partnerships, rest and recreation, like fatigue, sleep, rest and what you do to relax and whether you get the chance, health and activity, physical activity, and last but not least, is psychosocial skills like your self-efficacy or your confidence, your acceptance, what you can do in problem solving. And these were all different for every single participant. Now, when we look about what that means for measuring mental well-being, click. Yeah, there we are. Good. You find that in green, I've highlighted the concepts that are actually fairly easy to measure with current technology, like happiness, mood, and stress. They can be reasonably well automatically assessed. Physical activity, everybody has a step counter in their telephone, and many people have it in a smartwatch. Some other sport activities are maybe not so easy to measure, but still, right? Sleep and rest is also done easily. The ones in blue are fairly stable, like traits, like self-efficacy or confidence. They don't change so easily over time. So you may only have to assess them once through maybe a questionnaire or whatnot. But there's also a couple of things like the feeling of purpose, feeling useful, the balance between tasks and resources, boredom, social contacts, and positive solitude. It is other emotions like sadness or fear or anger or surprise that can change easily over time, but are not easily measured right now with current sensor technology. So it's a very different landscape, differing landscape that we see here with many different aspects. And yeah, they are either easy or impossible to measure through technology. Also, that's one thing. The aspect of stress, for instance, of course, it's related to mental well-being. But if that is so, it totally depends on the context. Many participants said, yes, well, I was stressed, but in a good way. It was a very stressful day because it was I had a new internship starting, but that's only natural, so it did not interfere with my feeling of mental well-being. And people always talked about many aspects of mental well-being as being a constituent part of the mental well-being. sort of like, yeah, I feel good when I'm outside. But also, yeah, to feel better, yeah, what I do is I go outside. So something is part of their mental well-being. It's a sign of their mental well-being. The fact that you can tell by how often I'm outside, how good I'm feeling, but also an intervention to increase their mental well-being. So that's a bit muddy. Yep. Okay. Then there's a couple of slides that you can look into on your own afterwards that show that our prototypes indeed were successful in being limitedly accurate, especially the face reader, the facial recognition app, but also the Garmin as well, because often, you know, in theory, in literature, they achieve accuracy of up to 95% in their stress measuring algorithms. But in practice, it's often the case, yeah, well, I had such a high stress level according to the Garmin, but I was at a festival and it told me to take a breath, but you know, I'm dancing, I'm having fun here. So they were very, very, very often, they were off the mark. Important to know is that people find this kind of measurements very very useful because you can't cheat them. There's no effort. There's no need to remember. And they would use tools like that too if it's low burden. Let's just jump to our conclusions then. So at the moment, can we measure mental well-being automatically and unobtrusively? No, we cannot yet. We can only do that for a couple of aspects, like stress and mood, and these aren't accurately enough to do so yet. If we were to devise a good holistic measure, this would, first of all, measure a really broad range of aspects, and then make it possible to tailor for personal preference what constitutes mental well-being for specific persons. And also, it would be automatic for as much as possible to minimize burden and limit the potential of selective data entry. And that said, people also said the burden could be higher if it were for treatment purposes rather than prevention. I also already said to Leandro that this presentation is quite timely for me because this is work that we presented at the DRS conference last year. But currently we're looking to set up follow-up studies that will also involve sort of like LLM delivery of prompts and better and broader sensor suites, where we also try through co-creation and co-design, do sort of like a bottom-up design of what needs to be measured. And if anybody here would like to collaborate on that kind of project, then I'm very happy to discuss possibilities. And I think that's my last slide. This is my last slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Sander. Thank you for your thought-provoking presentation. Just prototyping, thought-provoking. Always great and interesting to learn more about what you do. Well, I'll save the questions for later and ask Yvette to.
All right. Well, fascinating presentations. Thank you so much. I mean, I heard Sander's talk at DRS, but still this time, it's always feel very inspirational. And thank you so much, Leandro, and the team to organize these events, and it's a great pleasure to be included. So my name is Yvette Shen. I'm an associate professor from the Ohio State University, and my topic is from data points to well-being, and I propose a design framework of self-tracked data through the lens of positive psychology. So this presentation explores how combining self-tracking practices with the principles of positive psychology has the potential of supporting personal well-being. And I will begin by briefly introducing the quantified self movement and a positive psychology and a positive design, followed by a look at the key domains of self-tracking and how the data lifecycle plays out in real use, drawing some examples from the class projects from my students and also analysis of popular health apps. And this also leads to the design framework proposed in this study. So let's start with the quantified self movement, also known as personal informatics, logging, self-tracking. And at its core, it's about using tools to monitor personal experiences. Everything from step counts like with Fitbit to journaling moods using like notebooks to like logging expenses. And these tools could be either digital or analog, really help surface patterns and provide insights into our everyday behavior. And broadly speaking, the self-tracking tools fall into those few key categories. We track health and fitness. There are tools like Fitbit, Garmin, and then there's the mood and emotions. Like there are popular apps like Dailyo, Mood Notes. And we also track productivity apps like Flow, Structured, help people stay on task and managing time. And also we track personal finance, RIP Mint, but there's also some alternatives like YNAB to monitor spending and budgeting. But among all of these, health and well-being consistently taking the center stage of self-tracking, they're also often the main reason why people start tracking in the first place. So we track just about everything in the whole area of health and well-being. Like we can track steps, sleeps, mood, calories, and some of those metrics are very clear and easy to understand. But some others like stress levels, body battery, at least I think to lay audiences who lack the specific knowledge in that area, those things could feel very vague and hard to interpret. And this ambiguity often makes people question the value of the insights and also eventually lose interest in tracking altogether. So the question is, how do we make tracking more meaningful to the individual? And now let's shift our attention to what helps us thrive and brings meaning to our lives. Positive psychology centers on human potential, emphasizing on strengths, resilience, and the capacity for growth rather than just fixing what's wrong. And the related positive design framework proposed by the group from Delft turns the principles into from positive psych into design objectives, emphasizing on design for virtue, design for pleasure, and design for personal significance. So while most self-tracking tools deliver this information and data, they often lack a layer of interpretation and aspiration. And by integrating the principles of positive design, we can bridge that gap, connecting data to a person's psychological needs and intrinsic aspirations. So to find where this self-tracking and a positive psychology can intersect, we first need to understand the data life cycle from collecting data to organizing data, analyzing data, presenting data, and finally enabling people to reflect upon data. And through these seamless connections of different data points, the data lifecycle transforms raw, fragmented information into a more coherent, engaging narrative, bringing greater depth and unity to the experience. And this life cycle shouldn't just inform, it should also transform. So this narrative-driven approach inspired a serious class project I've run in my information design class since 2018. And the students were asked to track their own data using strategies from positive psychology. Like, for example, during the COVID-19 time, many tracked moments of resilience, coping mechanisms, and other times our tracking subject usually focuses on like kindness, empathy, gratitude. And those projects reveals how data could really reflect personal values and experiences. And so in the course, students were encouraged to include very rich context in both their data tracking and the visualization approach by focusing on like savoring positive moments. And they began to recognize and embrace what's meaningful in their lives. And then the results were deeply personal designs that felt honest and human. However, turning raw, unstructured data into meaningful story is a big leap, and it's exactly what that class is about. And the students who were leaned only on device data often ended with visuals that felt quite generic or detached. And meanwhile, those who tracked everything manually uncovered their very rich insights. It could also quickly become very exhausting and overwhelming. So recognizing that manual tracking isn't really always sustainable, the study focus was shifted to popular digital tools. So I evaluated top 3 health and fitness apps from the Apple App Store, focusing those that tracked both physical and mental health with data visualization features as a built-in thing. And the key evaluation metrics includes chart types, the graphical representations, the temporal analysis, the presentation of data over time to show trends or patterns, data granularity, like the options of allowing users to switch between high-level overview and detailed views of their data, the comparative views, the ability to compare track data against benchmarks, average, or their own past data, and also feedback mechanism, the feedback loops incorporated into the visualization that provide users with actionable insights, recommendations based on their data. And this analysis is more qualitative as to understand what methods have been used in those apps. And here are some highlights. Most apps use very familiar charts for a good reason, the bar graph, the pie graph, the line graph, to show patterns and progress over time. And most of them has this widgets and dashboard summaries to summarize the stats. And a lot of them have gamified features like streaks, badges, to encourage frequent engagement. But the feedback, at least at the time when this research happened last spring, the feedback is quite generic. It rarely adapts to individuals' circumstances. And this could be a missed design opportunity. So based on the insights from both classroom projects and the analysis of the self-tracking apps, it's clear that sustaining long-term engagement requires more than just gamification. And to be truly effective, self-tracking experiences must blend this extrinsic motivation, such as rewards and streaks, with intrinsic motivation, like personal insights, meaning, and growth. So the real opportunity lies in designing user experiences that not only encourage regular interaction, but also support ongoing personal development. And it's about aligning the instant gratification offered by those digital tools with the deeper lasting values of reflective self-tracking. So this balance is what this proposed framework aims to achieve. So the design framework I propose draws from positive psychology and positive design principles. It provides a structured approach for collecting, organizing, interpreting, and presenting self-tracked data in ways that nurture emotional well-being. So in the collection stage, we want to allow users to add notes and contacts or define meaningful timeframes. So that helps them to spot patterns, gain insights, and prepare for challenges. In the organizational stage, the data should be organized from broader themes to specific moments. And the idea is to mirror how we naturally understand life through stories, not spreadsheets. And when interpreting data, we want to be clear, be transparent, help users understand what's being measured and why it matters. We want to focus on growth, not deficit. Compare today's self with yesterday's, and rather than comparing yourself with others. And when presenting insight, we want to celebrate persistence and effort, not just the outcomes. So we want to use prompts for reflection and suggest personalized actions align with users' values. And finally, the provided feedback and the recommendations should align closely with principles of positive psychology that are centered around strengths, resilience, and personal growth. So at its core, self-tracking answers the what we do, what we feel, what we measure, and positive psychology helps answer the why it matters, what it means, and how it can contribute to a better life. And by merging the two, hopefully we can help people move beyond the numbers and toward growth, resilience, and lasting well-being. Of course, this comes with great responsibilities. We must consider data privacy. The psychological effects of constant monitoring could be a stressful thing and dangerous thing itself, and also the ethics of feedback design. But if it's done well, hopefully self-tracking can be more than just data collection. It can be a tool for personal transformation. And this is it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I have to tell you, my background is cognitive psychology, and just watching your presentation again, it made me want to take your course.
Oh, thank you.
Go back to school. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
We have some questions on the chat. I'll go back to Sander, so to keep it dynamic back and forth. So there's one person curious to know if you have information on what led to the drop-off in the example of self-reported well-being, and
Yes.
also made me wonder if you think it's still valid to use self-report measures in the kind of work that you do.
In this case, what I displayed was the work by people from the clinical psychology department at our university who work on complexity in questionnaire data about mental well-being, and this was an example of one person who for 1 year filled out a questionnaire with like 29 items, and the item I feel down turned out to be predictive for that depressive disorder. So yeah, this was in fact the what you saw was the onset of their depression, and the thing was it was stable for a very long time, and then it became quite unstable, and then it dropped, and then found a new stability at a much lower level. So I think that says it all about the validity of this measurement. It did what it said on the tin. And also, yeah, there was not something happening like a life event, but this was an expression of their disorder, basically.
Thank you. Following that, we have a question from Juan, actually. It looks like the assessment of mental well-being is at an individual level. Does it make sense to talk about mental well-being of a social group?
I definitely hope so, because if it's only very much on an individual level, then it's really hard to build good interventions to support people. And also, we see unfortunately in society that there are certain groups, especially underprivileged groups among young adults who are more at risk. So that it sort of makes sense to look at it from a social group perspective as well, and to see whether there's common denominators that apply to the group as a whole, because it certainly makes it easier to act upon the support they need.
Okay. Interesting. maybe you can drop this in the chat if you don't mind. There's a question
Sure.
here. Is there a publication, including the chart you presented, with measurements of stress and arousal that you would recommend? So if you can just copy and paste on the chat, that would be
I'll do so.
great.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
So now we have a question here that I think applies for both of you. So I'll ask you to talk, and then Yvette, and then I'll follow up with Yvette's questions. Do you believe that surveys are the most effective way to assess mental health and related concepts?
We do most qualitative analysis in our department, so we don't rely that much on survey and questionnaires like that. And also the phenomenon of survey fatigue. So I am not a fan of survey myself. And like these days, I mean, just recently, we're building those data physicalization devices around campus, trying to collect data using tangible materials. So we're always trying to find alternative ways of collecting data in a more fun and intimate way, rather than survey. But of course, survey can be very efficient. You can easily spread to a larger group, collect large quantity of data. So I don't want just say it's not a good thing, but it's but I think we all know the flaw of what survey can be.
Yeah, I agree to that wholeheartedly. I think it's always also a balance between the effort that you can undertake, because obviously the best way to assess mental health is a thorough conversation. And the thing about the sensor-based measurements that I'm looking to employ, obviously, is that they don't really they tap sort of like physical correlates of stress, for instance. They don't tap the experience of stress. And a questionnaire can actually tap this experience. And I think questionnaires are really good when you really know what you're looking for, what question you want to ask people. And if you don't have to ask them over and over again, and you don't have the time for more thorough and more deeper sort of like sense making together. That's when questionnaires make sense. But it's only one tool in the toolbox, obviously.
Yeah.
So it seems that people are looking for inspiration here. So Yvette, are there any student examples that stood out during your time teaching the course? Are these projects, do you think these projects could work in commercial applications or products? Yeah.
So I hope the short answer is, of course, it's I don't know, with the current development of AI, I mean, the automation of making things, creating things, who knows what it will become, the whole process in a very short time period. So there are interesting, so we're like I mentioned, we were just doing a data physicalization project. We're playing around with the idea of the duality of wellness. So every wellness subject has two sides. So stress could be good and bad, and the comparison could be inspirational yet stressful. And we are using those concepts to build physical devices around campus, to asking people how they will position their thoughts on the subject in those duality of values of things. And so that's our ways of collecting data and to see kind of the campus well-being in a whole. And for the small information design projects, I'm always fascinated by the different approaches that students can take by looking at the same thing. Like if we're for example, gratitude journal, I think lots of people familiar with the idea of gratitude journal, but when they choose how to visualize it, it really could be from they will take very different approaches of what they want to focus on. Like some may looking at the gratitude, where does it come from, or how much that I have, how much effort or money I have spent on in order to achieve this kind of gratitude. So it's it's always this personal interpretation makes things interesting.
Juan has just shared his question. Organizing data by moments sounds like an interesting idea. How would you define a moment?
So that's also something I think it's very individual for everyone. It could be a temporal thing, just time, right? But on the other hand, it could be something more about what moment means to you. Even within time, I mean, for everyone, I think that could be a very different lens as how you define moments. And but I think the general idea is the concept of narrative. It should be a story rather than just raw data.
Mm-hmm. And I have a question here that actually does most of my job, since we're getting close to the wrapping up moment here, because it goes back to the first presentations. And this goes for both. Have you thought about mental health and its measurement in the context of your work? And then maybe we can start with B, because the idea of solitude seems, questionable, or maybe a little bit off when we put everything together. So if you can start, that would be great, and then we can wrap up with Juan.
I saw some questions related to my topic in the Q&A box.
Yeah.
So from Hameda, have you thought about mental health in relation to To be honest, I haven't directly connect mental health assessment in my research about positive solitude, because it's a bit off to my research scope. And yeah, I think the rest of the question is super interesting. This is basically the idea of my research, because I think the designer's prescription and the design intentions we taken for granted as a public space designer is a little bit off in Hong Kong context, because in Hong Kong, it's really common to see a lot of people like living in a super tiny home. It's super common to see people sharing a bunk bed with their mom, or the domestic workers living with the child in the employee's home. So people have no privacy at home. A lot of people, they seek solitude, or no, they seek privacy in public spaces. So how people understand and how people perceive those kind of space are a little bit different from, or I will say the opposite from the other spaces in the rest of the world. So the role of domestic space and the role of public space could be changed in Hong Kong's context. And another one is, how do you ensure that an interview does not influence your feeling and observation when you are in their space? In that investigation, the investigator's body has been transformed as a tool to impersonate and empathize to the interviewees. So honestly, in the investigation period, we first documented our own raw perceptions to those sites, and then we forget all of that and trying to emphasize and trying to understand what the interview is talking about. And we were trying to live their lives and try to see how they perceive and the space. So that was the idea. So we try to eliminate our own subjectivity, but trying to use our body as a tool. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. We get questions from everywhere here, Q&As, chat, private messages. So I'm trying to combine everything. I would like, we are very close to the moment to wrap up, but I would like to go back to Juan and ask if you considered or maybe in future studies to incorporate measures around mental health and
Great. Thank you, Leandro. Yeah, it's a great question, and like I haven't like getting to that space formally. The closest I have in my research is the way I again I measure like social viscosity, and the framework is like as an individual I expect to do things in society, and of course I need to deal with others that are doing their own things in society. Let's say we are walking in a crowd and people are like going back and forth and like changing directions, but I may have expectations of what people are doing so I can walk in that group. But it might be that the expectations of what I'm doing are not matching what is happening in reality. So people are doing things that I don't expect. That discrepancy between what I do and what I expect. Sorry, discrepancy between what I expect and what is the actual situation. It's what I measure, and that's what I quantified viscosity. Now the thing is that the greater the discrepancy, the more unsettled I am. The more I need to adjust my actions, and it might have some implications in mental health. But I'm just speculating here. But
yeah,
I see connections there.
Cool. I would like to wrap up because we are 2 minutes over time. There are people asking here for your contact information, interested in collaborations. So since you expressed the interest in collaborating, we'll share with them later. I just want to make one comment to put everything together. Why have we chose to cover 2 topics instead of 1 in this particular seminar? First, because we've been discussing a lot about the challenges of measuring and understanding experience in complex situations. So we thought it would be a very nice combination, like to address individual assessments with very like large and complex systems like public space. So this discussion has been like extremely interesting, and I wish we had all morning of your attention, guys, or all afternoon or evening. But we'll wrap up now, and I just want to say in my name and Sarah's, thank you so much for engaging. It's been a pleasure to see your presentations in different moments and events. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
So much. Yeah. See you next time.
See you next time.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.